Sio, hola, elito, hello. Gershon Mosley, and I wanted to talk a little bit about separation and being alone. These are things that people really dread in our society, and it causes a lot of mental anguish for most people. However, I think that it's necessary for everyone to have some time to themselves in order to really find themselves, because if you don't spend time alone, then all you are doing is pretty much being malleable. Most of our influences, most of our personality is derived from those that we come across. So if throughout your whole life you've only been around a peer group, most of your habits, most of the words you say, most of everything that you do is based off of the group that you're used to being around. So I've spent a lot of time alone, and from being alone there has been obviously mental anguish. However, I've been able to hone in some of my skills, being better at things than the most people, because I learned how to focus. And not to say most people as in like I'm better than anybody, but some of the things that I'm really good at, that I'm noted for, it's what sets me apart from the most of the people that I'm gauged against, judged against, however you want to put it. But these things have come more to light now for me, because I've been taking apart who I thought I was. Like, I used to smoke a lot of weed, used to drink, used to do some of these a lot of different things, and seeking out attention or seeking out being around people. But it wasn't as much as, say, the majority, because if most people were alone as much as I'm alone, they would probably be in the nut house. And I don't know, it's comforting to me to some extent. However, there has obviously been troubles, because it made me think like that there was something wrong with me. But it's not that there's something wrong with me, it's just that I'm actually different, in the sense that the things that I think about aren't the things that normal people, not normal, but most people would consider, because they don't really take the time to think about these things. If you're around your peer group, you're always into something or looking to get something done. And get something done doesn't necessarily mean being productive. So most of the things that I want to do, a lot of the things that I want to do have an outcome that would be considered productive. Not necessarily monetarily. However, these things could actually be beneficial in that sense. But money is man-made. And most of the things that are man-made are actually destructive, if not to yourself, but to the environment. So I spend less time trying to output in a physical form. So I like to paint and do these certain things, but I prefer small, and or I do it on the computer, pictures and all this stuff. And so the digital age is great for me, because I don't have to have all this excess paper or excess materials lying around or building up. Because when I first got into painting, I had so many canvases. The first art show that I had a huge wall full of paintings, and most of them came back with me, and I ended up trying to get rid of them. So I was trying to give them to whoever, and for the most part, I realized that it was a waste. It was great for me being able to express myself, but a lot of this excess is a waste. And I would go over to some of my friends' house, and I had made videos or different things like that, and they never came out of the plastic, or the paintings were never up on the walls. So yeah, it meant obviously less to them than it meant to me, and it made me realize that, well, when we bring something material into the world, it's not for us anymore. But the trick is to find the people that would appreciate it, the people that could actually benefit from it, whether it be inspiration, or it's something that they can look at that actually would, you know, well, I guess inspire thoughts. So it's all inspiration when it comes down to it, because it's a piece of me, you know, that I actually put out. You know, it's no longer one with me anymore. It's just a thought that I presented, just like me talking or any of this. Once I get it out, it's not for me anymore, because I've mulled over all these thoughts for so long that they do benefit me, but they would benefit somebody else that might be considering change. And change is really important, you know, like most people will change clothing or, you know, their makeup or the outside, but they don't really think about changing the inside. It's like the concept of a chameleon. Chameleon can change its skin, you know, maybe to blend into his environment, or maybe I was just watching something on him. Maybe it's just because of the their heat or their energy, but they don't stop being a chameleon. So most people that are spending most of their time trying to present themselves in a different way doesn't mean that they're changing their thought process. Most of it is the idea of maybe tricking somebody else into thinking that they're unique, in a sense that they aren't. But everyone's unique, but mostly unique in the sense that we can change within, and we can always look the same outside as long as time allows. And we all are on different time schedules, because no one ages the same at the same on the same schedule. You know, our hearts beat different paces. People like to think that we're all on the same idea of time, but what was it, say like 10 years ago when they changed the time, the daylight savings, they set it, what did they set it forward? It was like 3 weeks. And I've recently had the conversation with people about, you know, about that, about how daylight savings, we have it here, but in Arizona or in other continents, that's not even something they even considered. So we're here on the Americas, well, mainly on the North American, North Central part of the continent, because it's all one continent, regardless if you want to believe what they told you in school or not. But if you look at Central America, where it's, you know, it's still all connected. And, you know, just think about the world in that aspect. It's like at some point you're going to hit the bottom of the ocean. So all the land is still connected. Regardless if you want to believe in Pangea or not, it's still what it is. The water rose. But the bigger picture to this, what I'm saying is that, you know, having the time to really like see yourself, to think about, to deal with your thoughts, because most people are trying to escape their thoughts, and they're building, you know, this idea of the life that you know, that this is who I am, based on all these pictures I can show you or all these videos I can show you. But those are highlights. That doesn't show the time that you're not really in the greatest of moods or any of these other things that actually really are true to your being. Because if you spend so much time with a happy face, like a clown for instance, they paint on a happy face, but you know, that concept, that idea that they're presenting isn't how they always feel, but they're trying to give a presentation. They're trying to show the world something that they aren't always, because, you know, happiness is fleeting. In order to really know happiness, you have to know sadness. You have to know the opposite, you know, of anything. In order to really respect it or to acknowledge it, you have to know the difference. And if you're always trying to say, you know, oh, I'm good, I'm happy, this and that, then how do you know, how does anybody know if they were to really get a bigger picture? How would they, well, until they get a bigger picture, how would they know that that's true? Because no one's always happy. You know, you can sit and watch people, if they don't realize that other people are watching them, you'll see them go through the range of emotions. You know, if someone's sitting in a park or with skateboarding, I spent a lot of time, you know, I spent a lot of time riding it, but when I would sit down, I'm aware of the people, my environment. So I've learned to read the way, you know, the emotion by even how people present skateboarding. You know, and I've probably stated this before, but it's it becomes really obvious when you start to become more in tune with yourself. You start to realize, because the world that we recognize is a reflection of ourself, but most people are running from themselves, so they don't recognize the world. We're all intuitive, but if you're spending more time trying to just engage the world, then you're not actually going to be aware of certain things that are super obvious. Like, some people will talk to you and they'll be acting happy, however their facial expression, or they're tense. You can see that there's a stress there. I was I read and I watch things, and when I'm watching things, there'll be ideas that come up, and I'll have to stop the video or stop the movie or whatever, and then go and see, research maybe a word being said or the phrase being said, and I come across a lot of information this way, and it's pretty incredible, because the way that it's not just the way that I feel, it's already been defined because other people studied these things. So when I'm talking to people, I find myself now more realizing that I have to talk to fewer people, or know who I should and shouldn't talk to, because I want to interact with just about anybody. I've talked to like bigots, I talk to bigots every day pretty much, but they may be confused as to themselves being bigots. There's a lot of things that I felt that I didn't like, but the reason why I didn't like it is because I really didn't know what it was. Fear is of the unknown. So when something's different, most people, instead of being interested in it, they'll try to just disregard it, or say that, oh, that's weird. I've had people respond to me like that, because instead of me just getting upset and cursing somebody when they make a negative comment, I really engaged them, and sometimes I'll hit them with like kind of a snide remark, but it's to pull something out, to see what is the issue, because it's not me. It's how they see me. So what they're actually expressing is themselves. Their focus of me as a part of whatever the world how they view it. But it's strange to them, because I'm expressing different ideas that they may not want to themselves express, because they've been told that it was weird, told that it's odd, told that it's wrong. But what is wrong? I mean, if we're gonna engage the world, then we're gonna make mistakes, but the only true mistake is that which you don't learn from. So if I say something wrong and somebody tells me I don't like you saying that to me, then I have to remember that if I care to know this other human, or if I even care about what I'm trying to do, I should be aware that if I want to be taken to to an degree, because degree means to take away, if I want to be recognized, then I should actually have to recognize the other, because it's wrong if you think that people should just acknowledge you, but you don't have to respect them. You don't have to engage them. You are nothing without us, just like I am nothing without you. Because what would the world be if it was just for one human being, just one? And this has brought me to the idea of when people talk about the higher power and the afterlife and all this. What I recognize is that we are everything, but we are living a finite existence. So we came from everything which was infinite, which is infinite. We're still attached to it, but in this finite existence, we identify ourselves as separate. However, you can feel the vibes. You can recognize so many different things, but really, what you're recognizing is yourself. But a lot of us are so confused, or so used to following and being told how to be, that it doesn't compute properly. The computer was based off a human brain. So change Change is inevitable. However, like most people are in a glitch, and so the way to escape the glitch is time alone, because you have to focus on the things that you don't like at some point. And those things that you don't like, it's not necessarily that you don't like them, it's just that you don't get what they are, which they're a part of you. They're something that you just don't identify with yet. And if you're going to be around other people telling you what's good and bad, then how would you ever know? I can say that I don't want to murder or kill. Murder would be like a human, and kill would be killing, like taking the life of an animal or a plant or something like that. Which some people don't think that insects and animals and the plants and stuff, they think that they don't have feelings, they're not alive, but there's proof. However, that made me think of something. I had this conversation with this guy talking about the moon or the earth, or planets being round. Which, yes, you can see that they're round, but what about when we can say it's a shadow? The Earth, when the moon's not full, then there's a shadow. But really, my whole point in bringing that up is that, yeah, we can see that they're round, but we can't see the circumference. We can't tell the dimension of it. And he was talking about flat Earth versus round Earth. And I think he got confused, and he was just trying to prove his point. But then what he told me was that I can see it, therefore it confirms it in my mind. And I was thinking, I was like, well, that's what anybody would say. But when you think about he didn't acknowledge the circumference, what I said to him in a prior comment. You can see it, and yes, it's round. But you can't tell if you like round in a sense, but you're seeing a flat surface. You can't see the dimension of it. So can you really say that it is what you think it is? Or can you just say, if he could just accept that, well, this is what I believe, it's not what he knows, because he can't prove it. And he was telling me that I should prove it, and I was telling him, I don't go either way with that. I'm not trying to say it's flat, or I'm not trying to say it's round. Actually, if I really want to, the more that I think about it, I can't say that it's going to be like a full sphere. It's possibly an oval. So, kind of round, but like what we do know is that when you go up to them, there's different levels on the surface. What we exist on, there's different levels. So I can't say that it's flat. That's ridiculous, because if you can, it's not an optical illusion when you walk up a mountain, because you get to the peak, or you get higher and higher. The altitude, your breathing and everything, you experience a difference in the change. So we can't say. I can say that the Earth is not flat. I can say that, I can't say that the moon isn't, because I haven't been there. I haven't been there to see that, those craters, what appears to be craters. Well, we could say that, if you can see that the moon it looks like there's depth to it, you could say that it's not flat. But you can't say that it's round, because if it's round, and when people were talking about round, they're talking about like a marble, or a totally round shape. So if there's different dimensions on the surface, it's not totally round. And that in itself, by the knowledge that I have on this, what we're on, I could say that. But I'm not trying to argue whether it's, I can say that it's not flat, but at the same time, I'm not going to say that it's round, like thoroughly round. Like, how do we know it's not an optical illusion? How do we know that we're not actually part of a program? Because people have brought this up, is that we're part of, how did they say? It's like we're a computer simulation, which basically is just a thought. We could be somebody else's thought, but we each engage, and we're, it would be pretty heavy that we're somebody else's thought, that we each have our own distinct lives within it, and we define ourselves within their thought. That's pretty crazy. But that's what some people believe. I can't say, because what I do know is, like what I was saying, is that we came from the infinite, but we are still the infinite because there's so many possibilities. There's, even though people tell you you can't, I've been told I couldn't do a lot of things, but I've done a lot of things people told me I couldn't do. So, and I'm continuing to do things that people tell me I can't do or I shouldn't do. How other people that are afraid to do for themselves want to try to control somebody else. So being alone is a necessary thing. And the more that I recognize this, the more that I choose to be alone, and it's better for me, because I obviously am not 100% ready to be in a fully engulfed environment with all these different beings and not having any time to myself. I don't think anybody is, and that's why a lot of people are having so much problems. That's why people lash out, want to destroy things. It's like, I don't think we came here with these desires or these thoughts that were negative. I think everything, when we came here, it's like, what is, like the words weren't even there, but it was, we were curious. We are curious. And I think some people, when they're told no, and they accept that, those letters, those symbols that create this idea in their mind, and they accept this brick wall, then what does it do? It makes them want to do that to others. So I find people, the more that I start to speak my mind, the more I present how I think I put it on the net, or put it on whatever, I put it out. The more that I find other people have an issue with that. If I had just been silent and all this, people would accept me, love me, I'm presenting everything and doing, I'm entertaining them. But if I make you think, then that'll piss you off. And I think the reason why the people get pissed off is because they don't feel that they're allowed to think in the environment that they exist in. We choose to be in. Like, of course, I'm amongst the capitalism, so I have to somewhat capitalize. But I don't have to live exactly like everyone else. I don't have to lie still and cheat. What's supreme? That's another question that comes up. Nothing can be supreme if it has to lie, chill, and still and cheat. No one is supreme if you have to do that. Supreme is just existing and being that the exalted concept, for others to recognize, without actually having to go out of your way to be that. So, my idea of this black and white construct, it's a caste system, and I can't even think of either being supreme if they, if we recognize what we're told in school. These are tints or shades. They're not color. So you can't be talking about a human being when you're using these concepts. They're so limited. They're adjectives. They describe the noun. They are not the noun. So how is this supreme? How is it supreme if you can't even acknowledge yourself within the equation that you're trying to present? It's ridiculous. That's actually minute. That's a degree. It's the lower tier concept, like the whole construct of trying to classify yourself in such a finite manner is ridiculous to me. Most people do it, so I'm not saying you're ridiculous, but for my life, that's ridiculous. And recently I was reading part of the Meru Netter, and the author was explaining right brain versus left brain. So skateboarding for me, left brain is separation and classification of things. And that's a big, I have a lot of that within, and that's what helps me get to learning tricks or adding, things together, and that becomes the right brain. The right brain is to bring it all together, it's the acceptance of more than just what you see. But there's a connection between. And and as it was being explained, the author was explaining the different civilizations, and he was using the black and white construct. And it's ridiculous because in order for anyone to build, they have to use both parts, both hemispheres of the brain. And that was what was being acknowledged, because the ancient people obviously did. But we've been conditioned in this time, most of us, but even still, our nature defies that, because no one is just left or right brain. However, a lot of people do lean to one side dominant. Like, I don't follow dogma. And religion, the word religion is to go back to, and it's basically culture. And most of us on the American continent have been stripped of our culture. Some came here with not much culture, and then they decided that, well, because we had culture, they had to cease that in order to gain control. Really is what it comes down to, is confusion. So but the point being is that religion, that word doesn't mean the same to me as it means to when people use it. Dogma is what most people are talking about, because God. It's like I learned a little bit about the Book of Enoch, and we're using words of a language that didn't exist when these books were written. So God and Gadriel, and we were never taught about Gadriel. We were taught about Satan. And the idea that's posed as far as the Garden of Eden, Gadriel was one of the angels it was the angel that was to oversee the Garden of Eden. And these stories, when I think about them, they're more metaphor than they're actually actuality. But I'm not saying that they weren't in actuality. However, what we call Satan was Gadriel. So and it was not Gad like I'm saying it, but it was God, because the A was like O. So, and this is one thing that I do know, is like when they talk about the gods, they say it's plural, Elohim, plural. And I'm not going to get too far into the whole dogma or the religious concepts, but it's plural. And they're talking about, when they use the word Lord, when people use the word Lord, they would call the kings Lord. And they'd see the people that were ahead of them as gods, as these things. They called us gods when the people came, because we were the builders of civilization. And they'll point us over to Africa, but that's a theory. And who's actually proven this? That everyone, and Africa didn't exist until the 1500s. The word on that continent. It might have existed over here, but that's something that people have to prove for themselves. And that means that you have to study and not just take somebody's word for it, which is belief. So belief and knowledge are the opposites. And most people go live their lives based on beliefs. And when you start to question things, it pisses them off. And this is one of the main reasons why they tell you politics and religion are not to be discussed. Is because, well, with politicians, you have to take their word for it, but usually they prove the opposite when they get into position, because they're hired, they're not elected. With the tribes, or certain ancient ways, the people had to be accepted into the position. They didn't just bully their way in. They didn't talk shit to get in. They had to be elected by the people. Not elected, but accepted. And that's a totally different concept. So we've been conditioned here, and this is based off of everybody following the rules and trying to lump together. They tell us that we're overpopulated, but there's a lot of space in between California and Nevada and every other state. And within every state there's so much space, and then there's just pockets of people that are just like lumped together. And it's pretty interesting to me. Everybody wants to tell you what it is, but they can't prove it, and they can't, and they won't. And if they had to show you, then they would prove themselves wrong within that presentation. But here we are, and most people are believers, followers. We're conditioned to follow. But following didn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me unless those that are in the lead at this point make sense and are actually thinking to benefit not just themselves, but they're of benefit to all the others that they want to lead. And actually, the best leaders are the people that don't see themselves as such, would never call themselves these things. So whenever I hear people, trying to confess, oh, I'm a leader, or I have these leadership qualities and all that stuff, it makes me shake my head and just go, that's sad, because if you only knew. Because a true leader will allow others that have the knowledge to be the leader, not even allow, but they would step back and be humbled enough to realize that I don't know what I'm doing. So if I don't know what I'm doing, I have to, seek the knowledge of those that do. And we have a world of so-called leaders. But most of them are just followers, because where did they get or they're scholars, and scholars were told they followed a teacher. Who taught them? Who taught their teacher? I'm not proposing that I know everything, but I know enough to say that I either know or I don't know. But what I believe, I'm learning to keep that to myself, and I don't even think that way anymore, because if I believe something, I have to prove it true or false, and that means I have to study. And the way that I study is I read different types of information. I do a lot on the internet, but I have books, encyclopedias, dictionaries, and all these different concepts. But multiple sources, and not just the sources that try to prove what I want to hear, because this is what we have a problem. The majority of us have a big problem with this, because when I find myself trying to have a conversation with somebody, it turns into, on their side, an argument. Because I'm presenting them, and I tell them, this is information. This is what I gathered from here. This makes sense to me. But I can't profess to know everything that I'm actually talking about to be true, unless I can actually prove it. But a lot of people tend to have a definite, like the guy saying that I see the moon, it's round. So what was the word? He's like, so it's proof to him. It's proof to him, but it doesn't prove that it's not flat, But and what I was talking about, he wouldn't accept that that it could be a different shape, because most people, that isn't the argument. It's this or that, and all these other different concepts are left out. So it's pompous to think, the Earth is not a marble. It's not a nice smooth round anything, nor is the moon or any of these things. So. And I can't say that it's flat, because like what I said earlier about the mountains, the ocean, there's depths and there's heights, so it's definitely not round, because there's jagged edges and there's smooth edges and there's all these different cliffs and all these levels. So it's why argue about it anyways? Because when you really get to the point of something of this nature, it's like, how does it benefit you? It's like, okay, you believe that it's this, but how do you use this to actually build yourself? I see with the idea of pyramids, how I can see many different applications for this. So a pyramid, it's the base, wide base, and then singular top. So it's like, say you have an idea, and then you present the idea to others, and then it'll take others to actually manifest this idea. So this is in a positive light, for a pyramid, is like the one with the idea. Then there's those that implicate the idea, like build. There's others that get the idea to make sense, and then it goes to different levels to the bottom, to where the bottom is the base, and they actually bring it to fruition, or actually use the application in their daily life. However, we have the leader, which the leader standing on top of the others means that the leader, if there's, say, a law or something that they're trying to pass or trying to get others to do, that means that they have to get other people to that are standing on other people, and every level that goes lower, those are what the laws or rules or whatever is imposed on. And if we think about rule, you think about kingdom, you think about negative, because a lot of those so-called kings were insane. But they were afraid of their families because maybe the common people couldn't get to them to hurt them, but most of them were murdered by their own sibling, their children, or their wife, or whoever that wanted to take their place, gain that power, which it isn't power if you just live in fear, and this is what most people do. It's like we as capitalists, the United States corporation needs. It's not even on the forefront. However, they are using the true Americans and everybody else to actually use that as a claim to fame, claim to power. So the leadership role, as far as when we're talking about the world, comes to the Americas, because everybody's concerned about what's going on here. And not just the Americas, but like North Central America, which they've cleverly gotten the world to accept that this one piece of America is America, and all the others are these different places. Pretty interesting, and it's weird as people study these things, and I know that a lot of people, they're hip to the game, so they're playing it, and that's how they go about it. But that it's interesting that more logical people that aren't playing the game, that are just living and actually making their way, and actually not really trying, their intent isn't malicious, they don't point this out enough. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's like, how are and the people that are claiming to be Americans mostly aren't Americans, all came from somewhere else, and then they want to deny us, call us names that aren't our name. And then when we start to refer to ourselves, then there's a problem. But the problem is that they're living off of us, and such is the life that liars lead. So anyway, I come to different conclusions when I spend the time alone, because ultimately it's, how are you going to really recognize anything if you don't take the time to? You're just gonna follow other people's information, because if you're not taking time to yourself, you don't have time to connect the dots. And people don't really like that. They don't like it when you connect the dots, because that's when you find out their game. Because pretty much that's what people are saying when they say life's a game, or or they refer to it as such. It's like pimps and hoes. And sometimes, I used to use this metaphor for my mother. It's like, what's the difference between a pimp and a hoe and a manager and the employee? There's no difference. It's like, just the only difference is the name, and people will accept manager employee, but they don't like pimp and hoe, because pimp and hoe is street. But it's all degrading. Really, the people should be working together. If you really want to get something done, you have to be considering, there's maybe there's the janitor may be considered lower tier, but who wants to work in a shitty environment? Literally, if you're dirty environment, it's not you don't have clean thoughts. So if you're in a porn or whatever, that's your job, then dirty. But that's what it is. But that's why these corporations are ruining the environment. They're thriving off of the environment, but they're just muddying it up. And it's such an interesting concept that people accept this. It's they keep the majority of the population running in place, and actually it's like running a place in the sand. And you've hit the line of water, and the further you'll continue to run, but it's going to drag you out. So you're actually not making any progress. And we see this daily. We see that people work all these hours, can't see their family, so they're disconnected from their family, get all these notes,
but then like when the bills come up, those notes get just washed away. And a lot of these bills, they're not even paying for anything that's really necessary. People paying for mortgages, but they haven't even done the research on what a mortgage is, what the word actually means. And like the idea of finances, we're using federal notes, which federal notes aren't money. It's the belief that we put into them that gives them money, makes them money. And really, if the beliefs are what makes them money, then what is really the money? Because gold and silver, they have multiple applications. However, if there's no thought to be put into how they can be applied, then what does it matter? Just pretty things. Shiny, and that's what most people use it for, but they actually put no thought into it. Therefore, they're the ones that get pimped. So I'm just gonna leave it with this for now, and yeah, it's let's see. I'm learning the language. Well, one of the languages of part of what's in my blood, because Cherokee is a tribe or part. It's an amalgamation of multiple tribes that were destroyed, that came together after, after a certain period of time, because there are so many different tribes, so many different languages, so many different ways of life. However, most of the original tribes lived in congruency with the land, weren't actually trying to destroy it. But some of us didn't get along before the colonists or the invaders, or however it may be put, came. And not everybody, skin color doesn't mean that you have negative intent, and that's not what I'm even trying to say. But ultimately, when it comes down to the things that I've been learning about the corporations, because the Virginia Trading Company, it was a corporation. I mean, the ships that came, they were corporations. So most of the people that came here, the slaves, the colonists, the original slaves, because we're not talking about what the implied definition is now, but the people of Slavic descent, the people that weren't Europeans, the Caucasians that were brought into Europe by the Moors or whoever took them there, because that story is murky. However, the general population of what we call the world was a darker skin prior to, 6,000 years, 7,000 years ago, as the story's being told, as I'm learning. But, it's kind of a funny thing, but I just wanted to say, Astuiga.